Here's the thing, you guys. What's happening, ladies and gents? You can call me the problem, or you could really just call me the can man, because anybody can get it. Africans, Americans, Dominicans, Mexicans. He could get it. She could get it. She could definitely get it. Anybody can get it. What's happening, my guys? Today, I just wanted to make a quick video talking about Sean Strickland, the middleweight division, and is the UFC trying to bury the American champ, America's hero? Now, as you can see, Sean Strickland, #1 contender in the middleweight division, number 13 pound for pound, very active fighter. And let's just recap his last couple fights. So, Sean Strickland beats Abu Smagomedov, hyped up prospect, in very dominant fashion. They thought he was going to get wrestle fucked by a crotch sniffer. Little did we know, Sean Strickland is like that. Sean Strickland a real nigga. So, Sean Strickland destroys Abu Smagomedov by TKO, and he's kind of just floating in the middleweight division. But he's been on a good streak. He's gotten a lot of wins ever since he moved up. He's only taken a loss to Alex Pereira, looking very good. And meanwhile, Izzy and DDP are having a face-to-face conversation in the octagon after DDP upsets Robert Whittaker by knockout. And they're doing this nigga that. Two real niggas arguing, you know what I mean? Just the usual. And that is the next fight for Izzy after he's beaten Alex Pereira. Makes sense. Gets a lot of pay-per-views. Has a lot of drama and beef behind it. So everybody thought. And Izzy had a fight date set, and DDP was supposed to meet that. But DDP decided he was too banged up, couldn't fight, so now we have to find a replacement for the Izzy fight. And who do we have here? Sean, the American hero, Strickland, steps in, and it has a little weight to it because they did have their run-ins at the press conferences talking about some Izzy fucks his dog, and he's a bitch, and he'll sleep you, that man slept that man, this and that. Everybody's seen the clip. And so, the number 9, I believe, contender at the middleweight division, or number 8, somewhere around there, gets a title shot against one of the most dominant champions, quote-unquote dominant champions of our era. So, everybody going into this fight, I do not want you to forget, the odds for Sean Strickland were 5-1. Izzy has never, ever had a title defense where there has been odds of 5-1. Everybody thought this nigga was gonna get dog walked. Okay? Nobody thought it was possible. Not me though. Dude, I totally thought it was possible. I actually bet money on Sean Strickland. Right hand to God. I swear. I bet money on Sean Strickland. It's more because I don't fuck with Izzy, but, you know, we're not gonna talk about that. I totally knew what I was talking about. I didn't know. Or I totally knew, alright, dude? But, anyways. So, Sean Strickland gets in that cage with Izzy, and I'm watching in Louisiana at my cousin's college, and dude, he beats the fuck out of him for 5 rounds. It is one of the most dominant performances I have ever seen. Nigga became the perfect fighter for 25 minutes. Shout out Cody Garbrandt. No love, the GOAT. Sean Strickland became Mr. Walk 'em Down in the first round, waiting about 30 seconds left on the clock, doing his little awkward Philly shell. Big, big. He didn't go to sleep, but he knocked that boy down. And I thought they were going to call it off. Most people would get called off at that point, beating his face, pounding his face in. But I guess Izzy put a thumbs up. It was all good. He continued to beat him up for 5 rounds, goes berserk at the end of the fight. Great moment. And the star is born. Sean Strickland now is one of the most viewed UFC fighters on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. He's actually a famous person. He's shining more light on the fastest growing sport in the world, the UFC and MMA. And he decides for his first title defense to give the rightful title defense to DDP. DDP was in, like, he beat Robert Whittaker. It was him next. It was him next regardless. So they have their little thing going on. He goes and fights DDP in January in 297. And it was a good fight. Very razor close. Most people in the moment had it going to Sean Strickland. Mostly it was a little bit biased, mostly fan based. But It was a very razor close fight. DDP edges it out, becomes the new middleweight champion of the world. Sean Strickland, no title defenses. It's all fine. Rewatching that fight now, I did originally think Sean Strickland won, but I was drunk when I watched that fight, so I rewatched it. I do think DDP has a point to have won. Like, I understand. I completely understand. And so everybody thought naturally, or not even naturally, in most situations, Sean Strickland would get the next shot at the title. He would get his immediate rematch, and we get to see how it really plays out in another fight where they're both prepared for each other, you know what I mean? And Sean Strickland's a fan favorite. You would think that a fan favorite would get an immediate rematch. People would buy that, sell pay-per-views and whatnot. But no, as you can see, now DDP is eyeing that nigga on nigga crime fight, that South African brethren fight with Israel Adesanya. Which, to me, it makes sense. This was the original fight. This is going to bring the most money in because they have real beef. They had that big moment when DDP beat Whitaker and Izzy came in the cage. Makes a lot of sense. It's what it's originally supposed to be. And Izzy is like a legend. He's a legend in the middleweight division. So many title defenses, done good things for the sport. So it always makes sense to just kind of bump him up. And he hasn't really fallen off. He just took one loss to Sean Strickland. So it makes a lot of sense for them to shoot it up and have them fight each other. But you would think, where does that leave Sean Strickland? He most definitely is getting a number one contenders fight, right? Most definitely, right? No, you'd be wrong. I'm not disagreeing that this fight night is the greatest fight night that the UFC's ever put together. Whitaker, Chimaev, two very good fighters. Always contenders in the middleweight division. Well, Hamzat is more kind of iffy lately. People have kind of fallen off the hype train. He's lost his aura. Still a dangerous fighter, though. Just his ass tank's a little iffy, but I will talk about this on a separate time. This has been not even rumored. It's been said that whoever wins this fight will get the next shot at middleweight. And you might think, oh, they both deserve it. Robert Whitaker on his last title run after he beat Paulo Costa. You know, Hamzat, he's a big name in the UFC. And he's been, waiting for this moment, striving for this moment. He might have not gone about it right, but it makes undoubtedly no sense. He did beat Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman. Regardless of the asterisks, those are wins. He is undefeated. Okay? And you might think, wow, two great fights, makes a lot of sense. But then you're just forgetting about the man we were talking about earlier, Sean Strickland. And it's not like he's a bum. He's number one in the middleweight division. He is the number one contender. And it's not a flyweight problem where Brandon Royval is the number one contender. He just fought the champion again. He fought him before. He's lost 3 times. That's a little different. This is different. Sean Strickland beat your middleweight champion very decisively. He is 13 pound for pound. And if it wasn't really a said thing about, because Sean Strickland has no fight scheduled right now, if it wasn't a said thing that Hamzat or Robert Whitaker was going to become the number one contender, I wouldn't even be making this video. But because they already have a championship bout set up and a number one contenders fight set up, where does that leave Sean Strickland? You look at the middleweight rankings, and you see Sean Strickland number 1, Izzy number 2, Robert Whitaker number 3, Jared Cannonier is number 4. Nobody wants to see a Sean Strickland-Jared Cannonier matchup. It means nothing. It's just risk for a man that was champion 1 fight ago. 1 fight ago he was champion. Now he's relegated to Jared Cannonier, a perennial contender. Jared Cannonier is a great fighter. It just doesn't make sense. Marvin Vettori. There are rumors that he's having a fight night. Not with Sharp Putin anymore, but he's having a fight night. It still doesn't make sense. Why would he fight Marvin Vettori? He's not in title contention whatsoever. Brendan Allen just took a win at UFC Vegas 80. Not in title contention. Arguably lost a fight night to Chris Curtis. Nowhere near belt. Paulo Costa's coming off a loss. Imavov, it's just, he would have to go far down. Most of these people are already booked. Who would he have to fight? Jack Hermanson? Are you kidding me? a former champion, is fighting Jack Hermanson one fight after his... Like, he has no choice but to wait. And what is waiting going to do? It's going to make people forget about you. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. Why is the UFC trying to bury Sean Strickland? Now, my theory is Sean Strickland was not seen. Nobody looked at him as a man that was going to win the belt, become the undisputed champion one day. Correct? So, when the UFC gave him that title shot, they knew how he talked before and his comedic humor and his brash personality. They knew what it was. But they thought, hey, he's going to be in the spotlight for a little bit, then get beat by Izzy, just be one of his title defenses. Nobody will really remember him. He'll get a couple more fans, but nobody outside of the UFC fan base eye will see him. They were wrong. Sean Strickland puts one of the greatest performances of his career, or the greatest performance of his career, one of the greatest performances we've seen in a while, and becomes the middleweight champion of the world. And with that, he beats Izzy, a big name in MMA and UFC, and he's now the champion. People are going to be doing interviews with him. They want to see who he is now. And now, since he's a champion, he's going to be put on the UFC page a lot more. He has to be. And what does that do? The UFC is a publicly traded company now. They have stock. And what hurts stock? Bad exposure. Sean Strickland, wow, he's not doing these things malignantly, he still is saying things that are a little bit iffy, things that you don't want, not very PR, about transgenders, gays. He makes black jokes, thinking this and that. And I find it funny. People in the MMA fan base find it funny because we understand how these fighters are. We have that sense of humor. The people outside do not really have that sense of humor, you know what I mean? So when people outside of the UFC fan base see this, they're just like, cancel culture is a real thing, bro. They see this and they just think, damn, like, who is that? How can you let that be champion? Take away his belt, reprimand him, this and that. It happened in the press conference for his defense against Dricus du Plessis. A reporter in Canada tried to come at him against his views on LGBTQ, and it was a big deal. Dana White had to defend him, but I just think they want to avoid things like that. And so they think, you know what, he might have got as far as he ever thought he could have in this sport. He's had the belt already. He's not really, regardless of how big he is and the money he brings to us, he just gives us too much risk. So they're kind of trying to put him on the back burner, turn him into a contender, when that's just not fair. I don't think Sean Strickland deserves this. Sean Strickland is an entertaining champion who speaks and says what he wants, and I think he should at least be considered for another shot at the belt. He shouldn't have to climb up the rankings again. This is not a Bilal Muhammad situation. He's not a boring fighter. He's a great fighter. He's not boring. He's very skilled. He's exciting. What more could you ask for in a fighter? See, Bilal Muhammad doesn't get those title shots. Even Leon Edwards had to work for that title shot for him to become champion. He's basically in the same situation Sean Strickland was, except he just doesn't have any personality. He had to work and climb up the rankings before he could fight Kamaru Usman, the GOAT. And he beat Kamaru Usman. Sean Strickland, same thing, times 10. He did climb those middleweight rankings. Do things that nobody would usually sign on for, but he says yes to the UFC. He always says, say yes. The UFC asks him to jump, he says how high. Sean Strickland has fought everybody, and I think it's not fair to just throw him to the side like that. Sean Strickland makes the UFC a lot of money. He gives the UFC a lot of exposure. In most cases, in these big corporations, most exposure is good exposure. Most exposure is good exposure, that's it. So, for them to just bury Sean Strickland and pass him up for people that are not, Khamzat is the number 11th ranked middleweight, and he's going to get a title shot before Sean Strickland. Make it make sense. I don't think it makes sense. But that's besides the point. Now we need to talk about what the next step should be for Sean Strickland. Now, if I'm Sean Strickland, I'd wait. I'd cause a fuss in the media and I'd wait. because I think that's the only rightful way for me to get up. But if I already know, if I'm Sean Strickland, and I already know that even if after the Robert Whittaker fight and Khamzat fight and after the Izzy fight, I got to go through some more hoops to get it, I might as well start now. For me, I could picture a fight with Sean Strickland and Brendan Allen, a vengeance fight for Chris Curtis, rematch part 2, because Brendan Allen is the highest ranked person that now is available and will probably be able to fight in a couple months. That's the best you can really do. Nobody wants to watch a Jared Cannonier matchup. Nobody's paying for that on a fight night. Well, they might because of Sean Strickland, and not paying, but nobody's watching that on a fight night. Jared Cannonier is not really in title contention. Brendan Allen has kind of put together a little run. Jared Cannonier, not really. And I mean, that's really it. He could really just fight Brendan Allen. He could fight Paulo Costa. That would sell pay-per-views if they were to put it on like a main event, like on not a main event, but a main card of some pay-per-view. They get the co-main. It would sell a lot of pay-per-views as a fight night, or a lot of people would watch it as a fight night. But I just don't think that makes a lot of sense. Paulo Costa's kind of losing, and he just needs to fight somebody more in the middle of the pack to get his way back up there. I don't think he's going to take that fight. But I think Sean Strickland, Brendan Allen, that's the next step if he cannot wait it out and see what's happening with the middleweight situation. Maybe Dana lied to Whittaker and Chimaev thing. I don't know, man. It's a really fucked up situation. I enjoy Sean Strickland as a fighter. I think the UFC is wrong for trying to bring him back down and bury him. He's done a lot for this sport. Very interesting guy, very exciting fighter. And I wonder what the UFC's next steps are going to be. But anyways, that's all for today, my guys. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you think about the situation. Do you think Sean Strickland is getting buried? What do you think Sean Strickland should do next? How do you feel about what the UFC is doing right now? Just give me any of your takes. And just remember to bring me that money.
Couple names recently. Who were they?
Listen, man. They call me the problem, but you could call me the can man, because anybody can get it. Africans, Americans, Dominicans, Mexicans, anybody can get it.
Thanks.